Benjamin Party lived in a seaside community called Bethsaida, in the town of Galilee. He lived with his mother in a small cottage on the far side of town. Now, Bethsaida was such a small town that everyone knew almost everyone. He was affectionately called Ben by the people in and around the village. Mrs. Party had been left alone to raise her boy, because his father went to sea when he was only 4 years old and no one had seen him since. Mr. Party had got a great opportunity to work on one of the big ships that sailed into the town, twice per year. He told his family that although he would be gone for a while, it was in everyone's best interest, as he would be earning much more than he did as a fisherman in Galilee. One thing forever etched in Ben's mind is the memory of the words his father said before he left. "Come here, Benny," said his dad. "Daddy's going away for a little while, but I will be back before you know it." That was the last time Ben saw his dad. He still remembers that wave from the seaside, although his dad's face was now a faded blur. There was laughter and squeals of happiness, inside and outside the gates of the Bethsaida Elementary School. Children were scurrying around the schoolyard playing, while others were already on their way home. It was the end of an ordinary school day at Bethsaida, but something special had happened. During prayers and General Assembly at the end of school that afternoon, there was an announcement. Mr. Philpotts, the principal, announced that he had been informed that Jesus, the Messiah, was expected to visit their village on Saturday. The news was greeted with much excitement and lots of discussions took place among the children. All the citizens of Bethsaida, and the entire Galilee, knew of the miracles that Jesus was performing in and around the area. Everyone was talking about Jesus and that he had come to save the world. The people of Galilee all knew Mr. Brooks. He lived on Wildberry Street and was blind for many years until Jesus gave him his sight back. Ben asked his friend Samuel, "Do you remember how we used to take Mr. Brooks by his hand and lead him home when he tried to get home from the market by himself?" "How could I forget?" replied Samuel. "It is so great that Jesus helped him to see again. My parents always say that Jesus is the Savior of the world, the one the whole world was waiting on all this time." Samuel said, "I can't afford to miss him when he comes on Saturday." Everyone also heard about Mr. and Mrs. Weinberger of Canaan, who got married a few years ago. When they ran out of wine at their wedding, to the amazement of the entire town, Jesus turned water into wine. People were still talking about it to this day. They say that was his first miracle. Saturday eventually came. It seemed to have taken a mighty long time in coming. The whole village seemed to be preparing to go out to meet Jesus. Young, old and middle-aged were scurrying about, getting ready to go out and listen to Jesus. Those who were sick and lame wanted to be healed, the blind wanted to receive their sight, and all kinds of people with all kinds of issues wanted to get help. The place was buzzing with excitement. Ben did not expect to see such a crowd. There must have been over 5,000 people, everyone pushing to get closer to Jesus. Like most of the children, Ben bent low and pushed between the adults until he was at the front of the crowd. He had one prayer, which was for his dad to be kept safe and to return home. He knew deep within his heart that Jesus could help him. Mother had packed Ben a small lunch. There wasn't enough food to pack lunch for herself, but like every good mother, She wanted to make sure that her son had enough to eat. When Jesus saw the multitude of people, he said to Philip, one of his disciples, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" Jesus knew exactly what he was going to do, but he was only testing Philip, who said, it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Ben realized what was happening, because he was seated at the front and could hear what Jesus and his disciples were discussing. He touched Andrew, another one of Jesus' disciples, and said, "Sir, I have 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. It's not a lot, but it's all I have." Andrew then said to Jesus, "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many?" Jesus told his disciples to have the people sit down on the grass. He took Ben's loaves and fish, gave God thanks for them, and gave them to the people. From the 5 small loaves and 2 fish, all the people were able to eat and be full. They were amazed and talked about what was happening, because it was crystal clear that this was a sheer miracle. After they had eaten, Jesus told the disciples to gather all the scraps that were left, so that nothing would be wasted. To everyone's surprise, 12 baskets were filled with leftovers. This caused an even greater stir among the crowd. The people were very excited. They said, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." Ben could not believe his eyes. If he had not been there himself, he would not have believed. Jesus had used his small lunch and fed a multitude of people, with over 12 baskets left over. After a while, Jesus began to withdraw from the crowd. When the people saw that, they started leaving also. Ben headed home but looked across just in time to see Samuel running towards him. "Hey Ben, I tried to find you, but there were just too many people. Did you see that miracle?" Samuel said, "Oh man, did I see it?" said Ben. "Jesus must really be the Messiah. He is awesome. He's pretty cool if you ask me." The boys began to walk home. As they walked on Main Street, Ben saw a man who looked somewhat familiar. He was walking in the same direction as they were, but on the opposite side of the street. Just then, the man called out, "Benny," and started running across the street. Instantly, Ben recognized the voice. That was the only person who ever called him Benny. The face may have been a faded blur, but he never forgot the voice. In turn, Ben cried out, "Daddy! Oh, Daddy, I missed you so." His dad swept him off his feet and swung him around in the air. Suddenly, as if appearing out of nowhere, there was Mother standing in the middle of the road with her mouth wide open. Mr. Party grabbed her and hugged her really tightly. "Thank you, Jesus," Ben cried out. "Thank you, Jesus. You are awesome. You are worthy of my praise." They stood by the side of the road and hugged one another, crying. People began to gather around to witness the grand reunion. Ben would never, ever forget that day as long as he lived. Jesus had done a mighty miracle in the sight of thousands of people, and Ben and his mother's prayers were answered when they witnessed the second miracle, his father returning home. Samuel was still standing on the other side of the street looking at the Party family. "Come here, Samuel," said Ben. He introduced Samuel to his father. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Party," said Samuel. Then the parties headed home, as they had a lot of catching up to do.